Good afternoon, everybody. A very warm welcome to another Live at the Waterhole. My name is Ben Coley. I will be with you for the next 2 hours. And we have started off our daily adventure across all of the cameras in Southern Africa and East Africa, up at Old Donyo in Kenya with a beautiful old elephant bull enjoying a bit of a drink and a lovely giraffe in the background as well. But I hope you are all well and buckled up for another ride as we go on our little foray through all of these wonderful locations. And as always, it's live, it's interactive, it's the largest safari vehicle in the world. And we would very much love to hear from you. So please do send in any questions, any comments, anything you'd like to know about what we're viewing, or anything else for that matter. And it's always fun to try and answer them. And maybe we can even have a little bit of a debate about what we are seeing. But what a lovely way to start with this big old boy. Beautiful set of tusks. Looks very relaxed and pretty much enjoying what looks to be a nice cloudy day up in Kenya. It's the same here in South Africa today. I am based in Hoedspruit, where it is overcast, cloudy, but not cold by any stretch of the imagination. It is horribly sticky and humid, as it has been for the last few days, and sitting in the mid 30s, which is better than yesterday, where it was closing in on 40 and grossly humid, if I am honest. We have a spate of hot weather at the moment. But there is a chance that next week maybe we'll get a little bit more rain, which we're all hoping for. But lovely to see some green at Oldonyo still. Of course, they're in their smaller rains at the moment up in this area, and the animals very much enjoying this bounty, and I hope they make use of it because they are going to have a dry spell coming up soon. It looks like a nice breeze blowing as well, looking at the grass, just moving around as well. That was the problem with yesterday and today. There was not a breath of wind here, which made it particularly warm, and the mozzies were out in force last night. We're actually on a little bit of alert at the moment. There have been one or two cases of malaria reported in the area over the last few days. So we are on sort of mosquito alert just to be on the safe side. It's not something that I've ever had to deal with, malaria, thankfully. I know a few people that have. But in 20 years, I've managed to avoid any complications with malaria. Tick bite fever a couple of times, but no malaria, which I'm very grateful for. Greetings, Jive Bunny, to you as well, from a warm but chilly southwest of England. You wish you were here. Well, say I would. It is lovely to be here, but it's quite uncomfortable at the moment. But I know the southwest of England very well. I grew up in the south of England. My parents are still in the southwest of England. I was there beginning of last year. So yes, enjoy the sun while you can, I suppose, Jive Bunny. Casso, you're asking why the elephant's last tail vertebra has two wisps of hair. Um, Difficult to say why. It's used to some extent in visual communication, but that's more the muscular attachment of the tail uh, to the pelvis more than anything else, and just the way that it is used to actually signify stress or other forms of emotion. Generally, I think it's just to deal with flies. That seems to be what most tails are used for. Of course, those tail hairs are incredibly thick, probably 2 or 3 millimeters wide each, which, if you compare that to your own hair, is much, much larger. And some of you may well be aware, or may even have worn some jewelry which is made using elephant hair. They make bracelets and inset it into other jewelry. It's quite sought after. A lovely little bit of tactile communication from these bulls, old friends, no doubt. This one with a big floppy ear. I'm still no closer to establishing why elephants have this broken cartilage or defective cartilage in one or very occasionally both ears. We have had a few discussions over it. I've discussed it with many people, and I think we've come to the conclusion that it is some sort of, more often than not, a genetic problem. Though, that being said, it's hard to see, but it looks like there might be a bit of an injury at the top of this one's ear, but they always seem to flop down the same fold. It's like an origami fold there, and it seems strange that it would always happen in the same place if it was done via an injury. But some lovely, quite literally touching moments between those two. It's often the way elephants communicate. They touch their trunks to each other's mouths. You see it a lot within direct family members of youngsters and mothers. Very intimate touch, getting all that information and announcing one's presence. You see there was no real reaction from the one on the left. Good afternoon, Harriet Hodgkin greeting myself. FC, I have Gwyn helping me at the moment in my ear. All the rest of you wonderful Wild Earth chatters from a lovely and mild Cape Town. Yes, I hope everybody's enjoying their Sunday. I had forgotten it was Sunday, as is often the case. Today ending in Y, the bush knows no weekends or Monday mornings. Looked like there might have been a little bit of message passing going on there. Just saw the elephant standing very still. Looks like it's possibly listening to some infrasonic vibrations that are getting sent through the ground or through the atmosphere. Stephanie Groenevalk, you're saying this makes you so calm to see these giants. I agree with you completely. They are such a sort of a dichotomy of an animal, so large, so powerful, capable of so much destruction, but also at the same time so intelligent, so deep, so gentle, and yes, they do have a very calming effect. I agree. Oh, this little flap lizard in the foreground, his beautiful orange head. It certainly looks like one of the flap lizards that we get down here in southern Africa. Again, my knowledge of Kenyan reptiles is not supreme by any stretch, but we do get the blue-bodied and orange lizards down here, the common flat lizard. PB&J Jam, yes, a huge elephant indeed. A good 6 or 7 tons, this boy. Of course, they can get up to 11 tons, the heaviest elephant ever recorded around that weight, which is, I would say, terrifying, I'd say rather impressive. A common scene here at Old Donyo of a giraffe wanting to come for a drink, but just unsure at the moment. Elephants known for their protectiveness over water. Okay, but it sounds like we have elephants in other locations as well. So we're going to head up to Elephant Pan in Botswana and see some more ellies. Wow, lots of elephants. Of course, we should be heading down to Botswana from Kenya. My geography escaped me momentarily, but what a beautiful scene this is. And one or two enjoying a bit of a swim, but multiple elephants. Two different herds, I would expect, being on either side of the dam. It just goes to show their preference for clean water and an entire ocean of water for them to choose from. And yet, most of them, well, at least these three, choosing to drink out of the inflow of that little well. PB&J, a family reunion, yeah, absolutely. It's always interesting if you go and sit at a waterhole in an open system and you watching a herd having a drink, and then another herd comes down to drink alongside them. Always fascinating to watch the interactions. Very good chance that each group knows one another. It does happen sometimes, as I'm blowing bubbles, that a herd will split into two and a new matriarch will be formed, particularly if they feel the herd is getting too large. Oh, something bothered this big bull. Ah, that's probably why. A bigger, more dominant bull coming in, and everybody just vacating the area. Angela, you're asking about elephants' eyesight. Um, Elephants do have decent eyesight. They don't see particularly well at night time. They do have a very mild tapetum lucidum, that reflective layer on the back of the retina, which just allows them to see a little bit more light than we do at night time. But we believe, it's another female coming in. Maybe it was a matriarch just having a little word with that bull that he wasn't welcome. You can see her ears spread, just showing a little bit of dominance. Well, maybe this is another herd coming in. But their eyesight is better than ours, certainly in low light conditions. They don't have as many color receptors as we do, I don't believe. I think they see fairly muted colors in comparison to us. But certainly have better eyes than we do, much larger, of course, which makes a big difference in the number of receptor cells. Generally, many animals, I think they see in only around about two colors as opposed to the three that we do. So they have what we call dichromatic vision. So they will struggle with certain picking out certain colors of light. But in terms of how much detail they can see compared to us, difficult to say. I wouldn't be surprised if we could see more detail in a more variety of range of color. Not quite so important for elephants to see specific detail, of course. They're so reliant upon smell and hearing. Still trying to figure out what happened there, whether it was just this large cow coming in who was not too impressed with that bull having a drink. She does have a young one with her, so maybe she was just being overly protective, but don't seem to be any other problems now. So whether it's a member of the same herd or another herd that's coming down, I'm not quite sure. But as I was just saying, always interesting to watch these interactions. Suppose you're asking how matriarchs are chosen. It's generally done on a sort of a hierarchy, so it's more often than not the oldest, most experienced, most knowledgeable female in the group. And if the matriarch was to pass away for whatever reason, then another one would take over. The next most experienced elephant will be the one that takes over. You often do get sisters, and if one disappears, then the other one will take over. And if herds split, I know of a couple of herds over the years where the herd has split and one sister has been the matriarch for each of those two now sort of new divisions. Here comes a bull causing a little bit of problems. Maybe this is the one that actually forced the other bull out. It's difficult to know. It's losing track. Too many elephants now. Stephanie Huddersfield asking about the planetary alignment again. Yes, we've been able to see six of the planets for the last well, at least 3 weeks, maybe even longer, lined up across the sky, which is normal. The planets are all on the same plane, so they generally do follow the ecliptic, so the same line as the sun and the moon across the sky. Of course, which is the origin of the zodiac constellations. That's why those 12 constellations are so important, because the sun passes through them from our perspective through the course of a calendar year. And the planets will always be somewhere along that line as well. So what's been interesting over the last month and the next month or so is that they've just all been visible in the night sky. Well, with the exception of Mercury. Mercury is under the horizon before the sun sets, but by the end of this month we will be beginning to see Mercury. It is starting to climb higher in the sky, but unfortunately things like Saturn are also setting. So there may be 1 or 2 days in the next 2 weeks where you might just catch a glimpse of them all during the course of an evening. But remember, Uranus is, or Uranus to give it its proper pronunciation, is right on the limit of naked eye visibility. I've tried to see it quite a few times, even with binoculars, and never really quite sure whether I'm looking at the right thing. And Neptune, you cannot see with the naked eye. But Mars, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn have all been visible for the last few weeks. And so once Mercury becomes visible, then unfortunately Saturn's going to be very, very low in the sky. So it's going to be difficult to see all of them at once. But anywhere where you've got clear views of the horizon, you'll have a chance. In terms of where you're going to look, just above the western horizon, Venus is unmistakable. It's very, very bright at the moment. It's in its crescent phase, which means it's at its closest point to Earth, which means it is at its brightest, even though we're seeing only a small proportion of it. Saturn is just sort of very close to it, just to the left, and I think slightly below at the moment. Jupiter is the very bright thing high in the sky in the east, just under Taurus. And Mars is in Gemini, so that will be just above the eastern horizon once it gets dark. Fun fact about Uranus, though. I shall test you rather than telling you. Do you know what its original name was before it was decided to be changed to Uranus in relation ultimately to sort of Ulysses and Uranus, who was the father of Saturn, who is the father of Jupiter in Roman mythology. But it didn't start out life as Uranus. It was changed. So I wonder if anybody knows its original name. It's quite an odd name for a planet. But Jive Bunny, you're right. No shortage of Ellies here, all over taking advantage of this oasis. Elephants everywhere. Well, just to answer my previous question, for those of you who are interested, so the original name for Uranus after it was discovered in 1781 by William Herschel was actually Georgium Sidus or Sidus, which means George's star. So officially, it was originally called George. I think that's brilliant that a planet was once called George, and there's a part of me that wishes that it stayed that way for amusement value. But it was named in honour of the British monarch at the time, King George III. But there were those people in the astronomical community that decided that George was not a wonderful name for a planet, and so it was later changed to fit in with the rest of the nomenclature of the other planets. Okay, loads of elephants here at Elephant Pan in Botswana, but let's head west into Namibia to Safari Hook. It sounds like we've got some giraffe. Ah, no doubt live at the waterhole is complete without some giraffe having a drink. Excuse me. quite an elegant sort of jump skip to deal with the spreading of the legs there from that female. I don't normally see them do that. Pilates glass jive bunny indeed. Yep. Oh, that one got a bit of a fright from the zebra there, I think. Good afternoon, Catherine. I see you're joining us from the Timavati, so just down the road. You said nice and hot. Yeah, somewhat overcast today, but very warm and very humid. Good day for the pool. This one on the left seems to have a very dark left front foot. I'm not sure if it's just been in the water, maybe sunk into the mud a little bit, or if that's some sort of pigmentation. Can't really see from now, but dark mane lover, I'm glad you are enjoying these giraffes doing their splits. Yeah, not easy to have a drink when you're built like this. Oh, what is that beautiful big bull? See the much darker coloration. Beautiful geometric markings he's got. Crazy paving. A little bit of urinary analysis going on. Just checking her reproductive state. PB and Jen, that's a very good question and something I'll have to look into. So you're making reference to the fact that the oh, I'm sorry, we've lost feeds there. We've come back to elephant pan, but PJ Jam, yes. So when giraffes do bend down to drink, they have to stretch that nuchal ligament, which is what enables them to hold their head up high, and they don't really need to use muscles to do so. And you're asking when they are necking, that they pull their heads back and almost like a bow and arrow, which is a nice idea. Build up a little bit of potential energy or to be released as kinetic energy like a rubber band. I suppose they might do, but generally in necking conflicts, it's more of a side to side. So they're stretching the muscle when they put their head down. Generally, they sort of swing out to one side and arc their neck backwards. I don't know the full ins and outs of the anatomy of a giraffe's neck in terms of its specific musculature, but there are obviously muscles in there to allow it to turn left and right, as opposed to using just the ligament for it to go down, or the ligament to hold it up and muscles to stretch it down. But I suppose it would make sense that that elasticity may help them impart a bit more momentum and release a little bit more inertia. So yeah, something I'll have to look into. PB and Jam, good question. But they can certainly exhibit a huge amount of force. capable of knocking other giraffes off their feet and killing lesser animals and people. Jill Beatrix, another good question. I do enjoy your questions coming in. You think of things that were different. You think of things differently, and it's there are so many questions in the world, so it's lovely to hear them coming in. Do giraffes learn drinking stance from their parents? Jill, I don't know. I would think this elephant lost half of its trunk. Oh, shame. Look at this elephant. We'll come back to the giraffes in a minute. This one's lost a large proportion of its trunk. I remember seeing one here a month or two ago that had a very stunted trunk as well. I wonder if this is the same one. Potentially lost to a snare. But assuming that was a young cow, she looked like she was at least sort of 8 years old or so. So has obviously dealt with it the way elephants do. Shame. Well, good luck, little elephant. I hope your trunk woes do not affect you too greatly. But since we were talking about giraffe, let's head over to Old Onyo again. I think we've got the giraffe have managed to find a space. Oh, loads of giraffe. Well, six, but I'm going to count that as loads. Okay, so back to those questions. Jill Beatrix, I would think it's instinctual rather than learnt behaviour. You've got to have water. So I think they just sort of figure it out. I don't know of too much sort of learnt behaviour being passed down from mother to offspring in giraffe. It's not something that I've ever read about. But certainly not impossible. But my gut reaction will be that it's just instinctual. You've got to get your head low, and the simplest way of doing that is to make space for that great neck to come down by opening the legs a little bit more. And Jive Bunny, yes, you're also mentioning that sound of two male giraffes necking together. It's an incredible thud, and it echoes through the bush. If it's a quiet day, you can hear it from hundreds of meters away. They hit each other so hard, and they're quite, solidly built animals. And if they normally go for the flanks and for the side of the neck, which is, as we were saying, has plenty of muscles in it, and a good solid contact. That impact rings out like a bell, but say it's this low frequency thud that is unmistakable when you've heard it a few times. multiple giraffe. Of course, I don't think there's any animal that has quite so many potential collective nouns as giraffe. The classic stretch of giraffe, the tower of giraffe, moving giraffe are known as a journey. And I've always been rather partial to a kaleidoscope of giraffe. That one just resonates well with me. Jolly funny, yes, the giraffe tower is getting more and more turrets. Well said. Oop, everybody's vacating. Do we have another elephant coming in? But always very impressive to see so many together. The most giraffe I've ever seen together is probably around sort of 25 to 30, which I saw down in Tunda in KwaZulu-Natal in a very emotionally charged sighting. I've mentioned it before on here, but probably not for a long time. So I will tell you the story because it's one of my, I guided for many years and we see lots of things and we go through lots of emotions with these animals, but this one will always ring very, very true with me, or it's something that I will always remember. Of driving around a corner into a big sort of open area like this and finding a semicircle of giraffe, a great arc of giraffe spread out over probably 100 or 200 meters, but all of them standing in this arced line, if that's the right word, all staring in the same direction. And we were debating with the guests what was going on, and we all said that they looked sad, strangely. And to cut what could be a long story short, as we drove in the general direction of where they were all staring, just on the other side of the little bank of acacias, we found the resident lion pride chowing down on a baby giraffe. So they'd obviously heard the squeals, and they'd all come out to watch what was going on, and more joined whilst we were sitting there. So it was a very unusual sighting, that one. But the simple fact that we all agreed that we could see something was bothering them. They looked upset when we first did see them. But this beautiful boy coming in. So yeah, I'll always remember that sort of. Giraffes are not animals known to particularly show a great deal of emotion, but they most definitely were. We knew something was up. This is a magnificent boy. Magnificent bull elephant, but from the great to the small. I think we're going to head all the way to Tau and Madikwe for some birding. Ah, the old weaver nest manufacturing process. Quite the architects, these beautiful little birds. Looks like village weavers. Looking at their backs there. All two weaver species that do look very similar. I shall wait for proper identification, but looks like a yellow forehead to me as well, which would suggest village weaver, as well as the rather chevroned, dark and yellow stripy back. Just putting some finishing touches to that pendulous nest. But it is an amazing feat of architecture, these little nests. They start out just by attaching some grass fronds to the branch, then create a ring, like a perch, which they can then sit on, and then they will fashion the egg chamber, which is the bit on the right as we're looking at it, before finishing off the front, and in many species, those long entrance tunnels. There are many different species of weaver, and all of their nests are slightly different from each other, and they use different weaves and they use different materials, but amazing that they can construct this using just their beaks. Beginning to think these might be southern masked weavers now. No, I think still village. Looks like yellow goes pretty much to the top of the forehead. I prefer to look at their back. But it can take somewhere between a week and 2 weeks to fashion that nest, and then they will hang upside down underneath it, displaying for the females and attempt to attract the female to their area. No, I think these are southern masked weavers. I think I did see a little bit of black just above the beak before the start of the yellow front, or the yellow forehead, or crown, we should say. We often associate the Deirdre's cuckoo with these areas where there's plenty of weaver nests. That's generally their preferred host species, although they will parasitize other birds, but as a brood parasite, the Deirdre's cuckoo will come in and lay eggs in the nest and then leave the eggs there to let the weaver species, or whichever species it is, raise their offspring on their behalf. What you often find is one cuckoo will sit somewhere quite close to the colony of weavers, calling, making a great deal of noise, and that will distract the weavers themselves. They will often then chase the cuckoo off, normally the male, and that leaves a little window of opportunity for the female to sneak in and lay those eggs. And cuckoos can lay their eggs incredibly quickly. Within about 10 seconds they can plop out an egg, and lots of adaptations to allow them to be successful. So they generally will hatch before the weaver's nest eggs will hatch. They've also got thickened shells just to keep them protected, and those youngsters grow pretty quickly and will generally outcompete the native or the official offspring, getting extra food and growing fast. PB and Jab, yes. So we have to take arts and craft courses to learn how to weave. Unless we're taught by people at home, I agree. This is that sort of classic nature nurture debate. They are just born with that ability to know how to create these weaves. I don't believe they are shown it at all. They don't hang around and help parents bring up the next clutch, which we do see in some of the cooperative breeding species. Weavers will pretty much disperse quickly, but they are obviously born with the knowledge of how to create these wonderful nests. Yeah, definitely going for southern masked weavers. You see that one at the top? It's got a very sort of featureless olivey brown back. That's very characteristic of the southern masked weaver. It's definitely Groenewald. Yes, absolutely. We can learn a lot from animals, not just their skills and their abilities, but the way they deal with each other from a social situation perspective, how they treat one another. Yes, it can be brutal at times, but at least it's slightly more predictable. And so we are beginning now, at least, to look at animals and learn for animals. Biomimicry is a really interesting school of science, taking ideas from nature and putting them into human engineering. Lots of examples: shark skins being used in hospital veneers because bacteria doesn't grow on it, the way the bullet train in Japan was remodeled on a kingfisher beak. We've got wind farm sails being based on humpback whale fins. Even I've heard stories of hypodermic needles, new designs to make them less painful, being based on mosquito proboscis, whatever the right word is. Um, all sorts of ideas of collecting water in arid areas by looking at the toki beetles and other little critters out in the Namibian desert that are able to get water from fog and humidity, or water in the air at least. They are really interesting stuff. Yes, Penelope Kenyon, you're mentioning those four crocodiles that were fighting over something. I believe it was a young wildebeest that they were eating yesterday. I was lucky enough to see just a snippet of it. I was very busy yesterday, but did see a couple of minutes of those crocs fighting over that meat, which is a pretty amazing thing to see. Not something you see every day, that's for sure. Speaking of crocodiles, I read something interesting the other day where there is a species of crocodile called the dwarf crocodile, which has been discovered in, or is known about in the caves in Gabon, I think, in West Africa. These subterranean crocodiles that are potentially actually developing into a new species. It seems that some of their DNA is changing from the previously known dwarf crocodile, possibly because of this almost subterranean lifestyle that they have. I think the eggs are laid beaches at the entrances to caves, and the juveniles disappear into those caves and they feed on stuff that they find deep in those sort of watery cave systems, and often have an orangey skin, which they think might be a result of swimming in guano-rich water, so bat droppings basically, which is having an effect on the skin, turning it orange. So if you want to know some of the latest stuff on crocodiles, go have a look at the dwarf crocodiles from Gabon. So you've got a female going in there. She made her choice based on the architecture. Maybe she's got some youngsters in there, or is more likely at this stage, I would think, doing the interior decorating, just making it exactly the way she wants it. She's going to spend a lot of time in there after all. See a lot of wing fripping going on. You see that one at the top left vibrating those wings? I'm sure that is just an attempt to attract some females to this area to try and show off their latest creations. Right, sorry about that. We seem to have lost the feed briefly there at Tal. And over to Juma Dam. Just before we went on air, we had a lovely group of elephants that were having an absolute blast in the water, having a swim. A couple of impala rams ensconced in those beautiful inflorescence of the grass there. Looks like some sort of dropseed graph, I think. Beautiful antelopes, often overlooked, which is very, very unfair. I think a lot of us will tell you these are one of the prettiest animals out here. Just look at the face, the shape of the face. Those lovely white patches over the eyes. Um, Very, very pretty things, and always seem to be in such good condition as well. Looking very happy, this impala. Got a nice bit of a shade there. Having a nice rumination, or having a nice ruminate. Quite sure what the correct verb is, or structure of the verb is there, but generally just taking 5 or 10 minutes to himself. We know for a fact that whilst animals are ruminating, their activity, their metabolism, their brain activity slows down almost to a point of sleep or a light sleep. It's a great way of conserving a little bit of energy, especially when you're an animal that doesn't really do much in terms of REM deep sleep. Can't afford to, of course, otherwise you'll get eaten. So one of nature's little adaptations just to recuperate a little bit. Ah, hello, hippopotami. They must be so happy after the rains over the last few months, although not that we've had any for about 3 or 4 weeks now. I wonder if this is Dewey. Don't know if anyone's seen him playing with sticks recently, but looks like the male on the right, just looking at the size of the head in comparison to the two on the left. You can see a lot more pink around the eyes on those two on the left as well, which is often something we associate with a hippo cow as opposed to the bulls, normally darker around the eyes. But so always say, just a rule of thumb. Okay, it sounds like we're going to zoom up to Kenya and Lentore quickly. Oh, the little banded mongoose. Well, there was a mongoose. Oh, well, we'll take the Hamarkov instead. Oh, there's another one. Normally the banded mongoose are in groups, little colonies. Actually got a little group that run around the garden here, which I see from time to time. Can get very used to people. Banded mongoose. It's not unusual to see little colonies or businesses of mongoose, I suppose we should say, moving through lodges and in and around lodges. Oh, sweet. He must have had a swim. I've never seen a mongoose having a swim before. Yeah, having a bit of a roll around in the water. How stunning is that? Oh, that's amazing. I have never ever seen a banded mongoose getting into the water and then having a roll around in the mud. Thinks he's a warthog. His hair sticking up everywhere. Oh, that's pretty amazing. I have never seen that before. But I suppose why not? Why not cool off and have a good scratch and a good roll around? All the other animals seem to do it. I wonder how that Hummelkop nest is down in Mabulla, which I got to see them doing some renovations on when I was there a few months ago. Hiding under the camera. Oh, what a shame those mongoose haven't hung around. That would have been fun to watch some of their antics. But say, a first for me. I'm not sure if anyone else has seen mongooses having a bath like that before, but I thoroughly enjoyed that. There is our Hammerkop, imperiously staring down on his domain, or hers. Funny things, Hammerkops. You often see, well, often, you can sometimes see one standing on the other one's back. It seems to be part of the breeding ritual. What often happens is the female will stand on top of the male's back. Quite why they do it, I don't think anybody is quite sure. And then when actual mating takes place, obviously the roles are reversed, and the male and the female will touch cloacas, which is the hole at the base of a bird, if you want to call it that, that doubles as the reproductive organs and also the excretory organs. So they defecate, urinate, and reproduce, lay eggs, transfer sperm, all through that one little opening, known as the cloaca. Just a wonderful way of saving weight. You don't want to carry around lots of different pieces of anatomy if you can get away with just having one that does multiple things. Shared, of course, with reptiles. Reptiles also have a cloaca. Oh, what's that? Is that our mongoose back? Yes, you can just see those little horizontal stripes briefly appearing above the rise. Joanne Mello, you are enjoying the mongooses as well. They are very, very cute. Dwarf mongooses have always been my favourites. I think just because they're small, but it's always interesting to watch them on their little activities, and they're very, very good hunters as well. Of course, they're Africa's well, the dwarf mongoose is Africa's smallest carnivore, but they are all carnivores. They to watch the way in which they deal with things and can catch things that other things wouldn't normally touch. So snakes, scorpions seem to pose no great problems. Even things like millipedes, snails, they've learnt ways to get into those shells and to avoid those toxic secretions, particularly given off by millipedes. So more intelligent than we probably give them credit for as well. And there is a lot of learnt behaviour in mongooses. Youngsters are often looked after by the older members of the group, sort of a sort of a babysitting service often offered to the breeding female, and they are taught how to do things like throw snail shells against rocks to break them open, I've seen mongooses rolling millipedes as well, which causes the millipede to do that reflex bleeding, producing that nasty chemical, yellowish brown noxious fluids that comes out that has iodine and various other chemicals in it. So they'll agitate or stimulate the millipede, get it to exhaust its supply, and then they can feed a little bit of peace. Ah, the sunbathing terrapin. Now, I have to admit that I've had to just go and check what terrapins occur up in Kenya, but it seems to be that there may only be one predominant species, which is known as the either the side-neck terrapin or the West African mud turtle, as it's also described as. Seems to go by many names, of course, but Pelusios castaneus is its Latin name. Seems to occur in East Africa as well. Whereas all terrapins, of course, put their heads into the side, or all the terrapins that I'm aware of do. It's one of the things that separates them from tortoises. Wild at Heart, you're saying that was also a first for you, seeing a mongoose having a dip. Yeah, me too. Me too. Very cool to see. These beady eyes checking everything out. Wonder what their visual acuity is like. It must be quite strange having eyes that are equally adapted to see underwater and above water, because you'd think there would be some adaptation to deal with the refraction of the light through the water, whether that's done with the nictitating membrane. Not sure how a terrapin views the world. Well, again, isn't the internet a wonderful thing? I thought I would just have a little look at terrapin eyes or see if I could find anything interesting out about them. And it seems that they do have specialized eyes which allow them to focus in air and underwater. And they've got lenses that can change shape to accommodate the refractive differences between light passing through the atmosphere versus that through water. And it seems that they have better color vision than quite a lot of other reptiles, which is possibly an adaptation or is beneficial for identifying plants and prey whilst under the water. JP, you're asking how sensitive is the shell? I don't know specifically for terrapins, but I'm assuming it's the same as tortoises. So the answer is a lot more sensitive than you might think. It has nerve endings underneath it. It is a it is attached to the skeleton. So it is said that even you just sort of tapping on a tortoise or a terrapin, they can very much feel that. So um, if you were to say one of the problems in traditional medicines is those scutes, those sections of the shell, they are peeled off. That keratin is peeled off and used for a variety of medicinal uses. Um, and that's agonizing for tortoises and terrapins by all accounts. There are nerve endings there, and I suppose it's a bit like somebody ripping off your fingernails or your toenails. So they can certainly feel a lot of discomfort. And so I remember reading something recently of a rather unpleasant practice before we were aware of this, that people who didn't think they were doing anything wrong, who sort of had pet tortoises, were actually sort of drilling holes through the shell to put a leash or something similar to keep the tortoise from running away. Not that it would be running very quickly, and that would obviously be causing massive discomfort to the tortoise. The shell also plays quite an important role in heat regulation as well. There's little pores within that shell which traps heat, which just allows them to not get too cold. Remember, they're cold-blooded, so they come out of water like this to warm up, and then that shell will actually trap some of that heat. So again, there have been some unusual practices which I'm sure were quite innocent over the years, whereby tortoise shells were oiled to make them look shiny and more attractive, but that actually clogs up the pores, and we now know it would have a very detrimental effect on that animal's ability to regulate its temperature. Jive Bunny, you're saying Lentoria is proving to be a very interesting and entertaining camera. I would agree with you. It's one of my favourites. It's not often big things, but we have plenty of other cameras that give us elephants and giraffes and all sorts of other things. Always something interesting, particularly from a bird perspective, happening at Lentore. Daniel, you wish you knew more about the critters of South Africa. Well, there are ways that you can increase your knowledge. There are a variety of websites and resources. We're so fortunate to live in a world where all the answers to pretty much everything are at our fingertips. The problem is, it's very hard to know where to start. So, my only request to you would be to make sure that you're reading what is reputable information. So I'm sure there's a lot of stuff out there that pops up on searches which have not necessarily been verified. So have fun exploring and seeing what you can find, but try and find the same thing corroborated in multiple places. Now the mongooses are back, digging for little things and arthropods. Some social bonding going on, possibly a little bit of grooming, or maybe just a little bit of maybe sibling love. Lying on his back. Very proficient diggers, of course. If you've ever seen a mongoose's tracks, they've got those long claws designed for exactly this. They'll have sensitive smell. Digging down, he's obviously found something, maybe a nice big grub or beetle larvae or something underneath the soil there. It'll be interesting to see if we can see what he pulls out. So, dude, I'm digging a hole. Stop it. Oh, this is really special. I don't think we've ever, well, certainly I've never had such beautiful views of banded mongoose on any of these cameras like this. So those beautifully sharp needle-like teeth. A minute ago we had a yawn. We see the dwarf mongooses quite regularly out on drives and things, but not often we get a chance to have a static sighting of a banded mongoose. Much more elongated snouts than the dwarf mongooses, and a little mud dauber wasp of sorts as well that's hovering around, collecting mud for his nest, I would think, in the foreground. Big photo. Oh, thank you, Mr. Homicop, for your uric acid deposits there. Marlon, you're loving the smaller members of the bush. Yes, so am I. It's quite nice. We spend a lot of time on these cameras watching giraffes and elephants and zebras, but this is really lovely to be able to see some of the smaller things up close and personal. I'm really hoping we're going to see what these mongoose are unearthing at some point. Of course, there'll be ants, termites, all sorts of little things in there, but I'm hoping he's going to put out something a little bit more substantial that we can identify at some point. Sort of have a little glance up to the sky there. Of course, they will need to be careful of avian predators, hawks and falcons, eagles. Would be a nice little meal for an eagle, that's for sure. I saw a Wahlberg's eagle with a dwarf mongoose kill in Kruger a couple of years ago, sitting in the fork of a tree. Obviously, he grabbed one and was dismembering it. Absolutely stunning sighting indeed, Stephanie Groeneveldt. I agree completely. It's very, very special. Come on, pull something out of there. Now we've got a really good view. Sensitive smell. Obviously got something there. No? Oh, this is just adorable. Hear the squawking of the hummercocks in the background. I'm going to need a bit of a bath after this. Always think hummercocks sound like monkeys. It's the trick for bird calls. You've got to come up with something that they say or something that they sound like and somehow draw some sort of parallel or link between them for your brain. Otherwise, it's just a cacophony of notes that makes no sense at all. Wildlife lady, you're also enjoying and loving, in fact, seeing these banded mongoose. That was an absolute. I hope they come back, but that's a sighting that's going to live long in the memory, particularly having them fighting, one having a little bit of a roll in the water, having a drink, see that tongue coming out with much faster than you might think. It's not something you see every day. That was truly special. Hello, Erica Oldno. I'm glad you've managed to join us for the last, what have we got now? 35 minutes. You've missed a treat if you've only just got here. We've had some banded mongoose frolicking around here in the Toro. We've had giraffe drinking. We've had elephants, all sorts of fun stuff going on. And not to forget our hummerkop, that it seems wherever we focus the camera here, the hummerkop decides to walk in the front of it. They've been living in holes in trees. Always a good idea to carefully stick your head into a hole. Don't stick your head into a hole in a tree. You never know what you might find, but lots of things do like to hang out there. Snakes, I've seen monitor lizards. Sometimes you get birds sleeping in little crevices like that at night time. I remember one in the Balula where I used to work there many, many years ago. We used to get a common scimitar-billed bird who would wedge himself into a little sort of crevice in a tree like that every night, and he used to sleep there. That was his preferred slumber spot. But yes, please don't stick your hands or head inside holes in trees or anything for that matter out here unless you've got a good idea what is in there. Yeah, well, that was a really, really special 20 minutes or so at Lentore. I think we're going to head back to Jura. Ah, brilliant. A hippo out of the water. Still glistening. Really is a chunky thing. I know it looks fat, but it's subcutaneous layers of skin rather than anything else. Incredibly thick skin. Whips and leather and things been made out of hippo skin over the years. Amazing how those little dumpy legs can carry a hippo anywhere and at such speeds. 35 kilometers an hour, there or thereabouts, at a flat out sprint. And look at the ecosystem in full effect. A hippo eating the grass, and the oxpeckers feeding on the ticks and parasites on the hippo's body. Danny, it's hard to give you a specific number as to how long a hippo needs to be out of water until it starts to have its skin damaged because hippos, they have a way of dealing with that. They have those special secretions, that hipposudoric acid and norhipposudoric acids that is produced from the skin through specialized pores that make a hippo go pink. So just because you see a hippo out the water that's pink, it doesn't necessarily mean it's sunburnt at all. If it was, it would get back in the water. That is just those secretions reacting with the atmosphere and turning a pinkish color. And that just almost acts like an oil to keep the skin lubricated and to stop it from drying out and cracking. If it wasn't able to produce that, I don't honestly know how long they would be able to stay out of the water for. Um, yeah, I don't know. Not very long, I would imagine, because we do know that they struggle. But it's not unusual to see hippos lying on the bank of the water. But say they're be very grateful for that secretion from the skin. Looks like a little grebe swimming past as well. Of course, that secretion also very, very rich in antimicrobial and antibacterial properties, just to fend off any potential infection from wounds gained from little scraps that happen very, very regularly in hippo society, particularly amongst the bulls. I'm sure if we could look more closely on that hippo, we would see plenty of scarring. Very normal to see. Penelope Kid, yeah, must have missed his midnight snack. It is quite warm for a hippo to be out of the water now at this sort of time of the afternoon, but not unheard of. I really don't think. I think it's probably she. Haven't been able to see properly, but let's call it it for now. No offence to the hippo. Is not going to venture very far. Maybe he's just been sat in the water looking at all that beautiful lush grass and just thought it was too good an opportunity to pass up. There is at least a bit of a breeze you can see, which might be quelling some of the heat, and I can't see the sky there, but certainly where I am, and I'm as the crow flies, probably not more than um, 100 kilometers away from that area. It's very overcast today, so it's warm, but not too much direct sunlight. And I'm sure that breeze with the evaporative cooling on the skin, having just got out of the water, is also uh, helping to just regulate that temperature. I think the rest of them are probably thinking the same thing. Crazy hippo, stay in the water where it's cool. Yeah, my hippo's got a little bit shy and bashful, it seems. Going to hide behind, I think, a guarri bush. So let's head back up to Kenya and Oldonyo. See the elephant with his trunk clamped over the inflow pipe for the water hole there, getting that fresher water. Oh, hello, heron. Now, I don't know what heron that's going to be. I'm going to have to do a quick bit of delving around of the Noldonio bird list to find out what herons occur up there. Okay, but it does seem that black-headed herons do occur up at Oldonia, so I'm going to go with my initial thought. So similar to the grey heron, but you can see that lovely two-toned head and sort of chin breast area. Deciding maybe a spot of fishing not advisable with a 6-ton elephant having a drink. Heron sucking the water out of the pipe. It does come out just as a trickle, so that's why he's got his trunk clamped over there for quite a long period of time, trying to maximize some of that clean water into the trunk, which can hold, depending on which source, maybe 8, possibly even 10 litres of water at once. idea to just remain cautious. That lovely little hole in his left ear, which also seems to possibly have a little cartilaginous problem. So I'm never quite sure how those holes develop. There are stories of certain types of bacteria that will actually, um, I don't say feed on the ear, but I suppose they are. Whether or not they can actually cause that hole, I'm not so sure. But if there was a little scratch or an infection there, and that particular type of bacteria could get into it, then I believe it can eat away at the skin around that area and actually produce a hole like that. Interesting. I wonder if he's picking up some information. Yes, I thought so. It's look at the size of the tusks on this one. This might be an interesting interaction. You see the way he turned around and was just had his always standing on a tiptoe. And there are very, very sensitive nerve endings, the front part of an elephant's feet. And say maybe there was a rumble, or if he was picking up the vibrations of the elephant walking, which you could see he was distracted by something. Sure, there are some beautiful specimens of elephant in this area. Little show of disapproval. Yes, Lady Macbeth, I'm assuming you're referring to that rather uncalled for incident a few months back where the giraffe was just having a drink and an elephant came out of the background there and poor little giraffe was just moving away and the elephant ran it through with its tusks. There was a big flap of skin hanging off. Whether or not what happened to the giraffe, I'm not 100% sure whether it died from its injuries, but it had a nasty chunk of flesh taken out, and yeah, completely uncalled for. Just the elephant came wandering in, and with absolutely no provocation at all, just skewered this poor giraffe. It looks like a very relaxed elephant as well, just resting the trunk on the floor. Thing weighs a lot more than you might think. Huge amounts of muscle in there, which is very, very heavy. That whole head and trunk and tusks weighs around best part of a ton. But that's the sign of a very relaxed elephant. Sort of invasion of personal space. Just thinking the one on the left actually looks like the older of the two, even though the one on the right has a slightly wider head. You can just see from the condition of the skin and the level of the sunken temples. The one on the left is the older elephant, which is generally very important. And I think what we've just seen there is significant as well. The elephant's urinated, but the penis has not emerged from the sheath, which I would interpret as being a relatively submissive action because it normally does come down. Oh, no, there we go. But whether or not that was anything to do with it, I'm not sure. Lady Macbeth was a good question. And if giraffe, I'm not sure how low frequency giraffes can pick up. I doubt it's as low as an elephant. Whether or not they can hear infrasound, I'm not sure, or whether just very low frequencies. But you were saying it'd be interesting or wondering whether giraffe will be able to pick up those infrasonic rumblings of an elephant. I think even if they could sense them, they wouldn't have the correct software in their brains to decode them. So they might be aware of the sound, but I'm guessing would have no understanding of what the sound actually meant. But interesting thought, Lady Macbeth. Not sure. And Angela, you are enjoying seeing these magnificent animals, and aren't they just magnificent? And I'm glad you've been enjoying the afternoon. VC age of these two, always hard to tell. I would say the one on the left is older. The one on the right looks to be younger than the size of his head and the size of his tusks might suggest. It's just a gut feel, just the condition of his skin. You can see his back is still relatively straight. The other one is sunken a little bit. The temples are not particularly sunken on this one on the right. So it's always very difficult to say. But I would say this one potentially in his 30s, early 30s maybe, and the one on the left maybe late 30s, early 40s. But that is a pure guess based on experience and a bit of gut instinct. But definitely the one on the left is the older, even though genetically speaking, I think the one on the right has the stronger genetics in terms of size. But say there is an awful lot of respect for one's elders. And we've seen, say, a couple of interactions that definitely suggests the one on the left is the more dominant of the two. The way he anticipated the other one's arrival, the head shake that he gave him, the little nudge when this one got too close. So I interpreted the urination without the penis emerging from the sheath as a relatively submissive action as well. And possibly just the way the one on the right was standing with his trunk down, almost sort of trying to seem submissive and relaxed in the other one's presence. He does almost look a bit sheepish and half-hearted in his actions, this one on the right. It sounds strange when you say it, to think of describe an elephant being sheepish. It just seems his activities are lacking a little bit of confidence. Amazing they can see anything at all through those great big bushy eyelashes. But very, very important to keep one's eyes protected from that harsh African sunlight, from all of the dust, from all of the thorns on the trees upon which they're feeding. Look at them, they're well over an inch long, those eyelashes. How cool is this that we've got cameras where we can zoom in to the point where we can discuss the form of an elephant's eyelash? I wonder if this one looks as if he was sort of loitering. So, yeah, I think he also wanted to get into this fresh water supply, but had to wait his turn. Kate, if they were both in must, how would they have interacted with each other? Well, again, it's difficult to say. On the assumption that they were both equally matched, then theoretically, had they felt the need to compete, they potentially would have come to blows. We would have seen the wrestling of tusks and sort of pushing and shoving going on. But say, remember that generally there's an awful lot of respect in elephant communities, and if one has the upper hand psychologically, the other one generally wouldn't try, and would still give him a wide berth. If this youngster had a bit more confidence and wanted to try his luck, then again, we might have had a little bit more aggressive behaviour. But certainly from what we've seen, with neither of them being in must, I would imagine this one would have still given the other one a respectful amount of distance. If he did want to try and the two had an altercation, generally speaking, the loser will come out of must very, very quickly. And that's the way that the biggest dominant bull ends up getting to a herd and having the breeding opportunities. So what an interesting behaviour we've seen. I thought when this other one was on the other side, so he just didn't really look particularly engaged in what he was doing. He was half-heartedly spraying himself in mud, missing with a lot of the mud that he was throwing, which is very unlike an elephant. And I think he really was just buying time for the opportunity to get to the fresher water. So that water has dropped a little bit. It probably is quite muddy and a little bit unsanitary. So rather take the freshest water when you can. Giraffe look like they might be going to try their luck, particularly the one at the back, the younger of the two males, judging by his slightly more tufted ossicones on the top of his head, maybe a little bit of youthful bravado. Has yet to have a run-in with an elephant, perhaps. Sarah, do any other animals have a must equivalent? So must in elephants, of course, is that heightened testosterone level manifesting in a variety of physiological signs that we can see. Um, Dripping urine, secreting temporal glands, general posture and attitude, aggression levels, um, the smell associated with it. I don't know of any other animals that have such an obvious outward appearance, but there are many animals that do during the breeding season have, or where the males have a more aggressive outlook on life, shall we say. We could argue the same thing with something like impalas when they go into the rut and they start fighting with one another. That is a prompted behavioral change from increases in testosterone. So a lot of antelope species do it, but I don't know of any other animals that actually exhibit such an obvious physiological change that is recognizable to us during must. But we are down to about the last 90 seconds or so of the show. So, Wildlife Lady, I'm glad you have enjoyed it. Penelope Kenyon, likewise, I'm glad you could join us. And we have had some great sightings again. I think I would hope that you would all agree that despite beautiful elephant and giraffe sightings, I think the stars of the show were very much the banded mongoose at Lentore. So showing me some things that I've never seen before. Having mongoose having a bit of a dip in the water and watching them dig things up and having their little fights, that was really, really special. So nice to appreciate some of the smaller members of the bush instead of these more iconic creatures. But that's what it's all about. Ecosystems are built on very complex scaffoldings of relationships, and we need all of these different things from the tiniest ant up to the biggest elephant to allow these ecosystems to prosper the way that they do. Oh, and let's not forget our hippo out of the water at Juma as well. But we are down to the last 20 seconds or so now. So, to all of you who joined us, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your comments and your questions. It's always a pleasure to hear from you all. I'll be back again tomorrow, 12:30 Central African time, and I hope to see you all there. But have a wonderful Sunday.